Let's start in a seated position in tonight's class. And you can sit either kneeling in Vajrasana or you can sit cross-legged. I'm kind of more and more getting used to the kneeling myself. And so let's consider the spine tonight in terms of getting you ready for the spring, for the golf and the pickleball and the canoeing and the outdoor activities. So let your eyes close and feel that winter spine. That usually the winter spine is a little condensed. It's been under the weight of heavy clothing and frigid temperatures. And as the sun comes out, as the springtime emerges, like a bear coming out of hibernation, the spine also wants to come out. And while there are 7 directions of the spine, the one we'll work on tonight to begin with is simply the elongation of the spine, the lengthening of the spine. So gently rock from side to side. Make sure you feel stable on your seat. And then arch the low back and then crunch the abdominals a little bit as you tilt the pelvis forward and backward. The next time you arch the low back, move away from that extreme of the arch so there's just a slight arch. The pelvis slightly tilted forward. And then feel the rib cage lift. As the rib cage lifts, you don't want to lift the sit bones off, so the sit bones sink down and the ribs lift. It's hard to do both of those actions simultaneously, so one nice way to do it is, as you breathe in, push down through the sit bones, and as you exhale, lift up through the ribs. So you're constantly alternating from sinking down and lifting up. And then let the back of the head lift up. It comes back and lifts up. So that piece of work, if you do it consistently, will start to help take pressure off the vertebra of the spine. And when you're a golfer, when you canoe, when you play tennis, you really want this verticality of the spine, this uplifting. And there's a little bit of core strength needed here. Let the shoulders roll back and down so the arms remain relaxed on that strong core. And let the face be soft. Focus on your breathing. And on the next exhale, do a 30% rotation of the head to the right, 30%, until you just feel that first tensing. Exhale, come back to neutral. And then as you exhale, 10, 30, 40% to the left. And notice the difference between the left and right side. Inhale, neutral. And the same thing with the shoulders. On the next exhale, bring the left shoulder forward, right shoulder back, right hand behind the back, left hand across the body. Just about 30 or 40% of your range. So well within your range, no strain, no stress. And with that right shoulder back, left shoulder forward, gently turn the head to about 30% to the right. And just notice how that feels. And when I say 30, 40%, I'm really asking you to move it until you feel that first resistance from the muscles. Exhale, turning the head to the left. Once again, until you feel that first little, ooh, something wants to stop it turning. So there's no force. And then inhale, release, unwind, come back. Now, even though these are tiny turnings, tiny movements, you will be surprised how they increase the flexibility. There's a whole therapeutic model called Feldenkrais, which uses tiny movements of the body so that you simply become more aware of the smaller movements, the micro movements that will inform the macro movements. Let's try to the left, left shoulder back, right shoulder forward, right hand crosses the body, left hand behind. Just no effort, just that first tinge. And then let the head move towards that left side. Notice its range of motion before it starts to speak to you. And then try the head to the other direction. Notice how that feels. Once again, no force, just well within that 50% range. And then release. So we'll get deeper into the twists as we go through the class. But for now, just feeling those first twists in the neck and the shoulders. Exhale, hinge forward, remove what you're sitting on. And if you have a block handy, I'm going to recommend you sit on a block. We're going to come into shoelace pose and work on the twisted shoelace pose. So just for a moment, extend the legs, just release the back of the legs. Rule of thumb here is the higher you sit up, the easier it should be. So if you have 2 blocks, you can start with 2 blocks and come down to 1 block, or you can start with 1 block and see where you are. So let's take the left foot underneath the body first, underneath the right leg. Now ideally what I'm trying to do here is get the knee lined up front and center, so it's not kind of like a cross-legged, it's more like that left foot is down beside my right buttock. So that usually isn't too bad. It's this second leg that can create the issues here. So you can start by crossing the foot over as far as it comes and just leave it there. If you can already feel this on the outside of those abductors, the IT band area. Over time, you'll be able to bring that right foot back more and more. And I've seen people who are so flexible, amazing, they can bring this right foot right back here, and it's something else. So already I'm feeling this. Bring both hands to the knee. And take a moment here to just to tune into the amount of sensation that you're feeling. Remembering 60-70% is a good start. So if you're well over that, like 80-90 or straining, just back off a little bit, just make micro movements until you feel your body's settled in this position. And we're going to go with the direction of the twist. So the right leg is on top. So let's bring that left shoulder back, right shoulder forward, so twisting towards that right leg. Once again, looking for that moderate twist. So if you've gone too far, consider coming back a little bit so you're well inside a comfortable rotation, and you may be rotating a little more than you did at the beginning of the class, or less, depending on how this crossed over position feels. Now think about the length of the spine again. As you inhale, the sit bones sink into your block or cushion, and as you exhale, the crown of the head lifts up. You feel that spine lift up. So the trunk of the body is going to remain stationary in the twist, and the cervical spine is going to move left and right as you breathe. So it's a very small movement, well within the range of comfort. Now you can let the cervical spine come to stillness as well, either in the twist or neutral, if the rotating isn't working for you. Remember, we're keeping the rotation, the feelings in the neck need to be quite gentle. The next time you turn the head to the left shoulder, pause. And as you pause, lengthen through the spine, shoulders back and down. Feel the breath. Three more breaths. And on that third exhale, release both legs. You might like to take a moment here just to do a little campfire pose. Noticing the sensations as they rebound after that rest. So we're going to come through the other side. So the opposite foot comes underneath first. And you might want to start just simply by standing that foot as close as you can to the center, so you can walk it across, or if you can bring it down, knee over knee, or as close as you can to that. Remember, we're not looking for perfection here. What we're trying to do is feel our way into the pose. Feel your way into the pose. Trying to find that nice 50, 60, 70% sensation. Lengthen through the spine before we twist. Exhale to the right this time. Right shoulder back, left shoulder forward. And if you've overdone it, come back a little bit. So we're just finding that moderate sensation. And then if you enjoyed the swivel of the head, a slow, gentle swivel, When we go slowly, it's easier to focus on the sensations in the range of motion. We get early warning signals when the neck starts to tighten up. So we develop a sensitivity that most people don't have. So yoga, you become more sensitive to the small changes, and you can make adjustments before you come into pain or injury. And the next time the head swivels to the right, you can hold if that's interesting. Otherwise, continue to swivel or hold the head in a different orientation. Keeping the chin away from the chest. Good. I'm seeing some good postures there. That's good. Three more breaths. And then slowly release. Once again, take a moment to uncross the legs and feel the sensations. You might even want to stretch the legs out a bit. That can feel nice. And then we're going to come onto all fours. So come off whatever you're sitting onto. Come onto your knees, hands. You can have a couple of blocks handy at the top of the mat. Hands under shoulders, knees under hips. So we've been focused on the twist. Now let's come into flexion and extension of the spine. Cat and cow. Notice how that feels. And then come to neutral. Another nice pose that I learned recently is in that neutral tabletop pose, keep the arms straight and then let the left shoulder blade simply pick the left hand off the mat. So you can see my hand is off the mat, but my arm has stayed straight. The only thing that moved was my left shoulder blade and then back down. Try the same on the right. So the right shoulder blade brings the hand off and then back. So the movement's really starting up in the shoulder blade to lift the hand up and down. So the hands walk up and down, but the arms remain straight as one shoulder picks up its hand and then alternating to the other. So really isolating those muscles that retract the shoulder blade to lift the hand. And then exhale, release. Come down onto the belly. Whoa. Notice how the belly feels today. The back. Straddle the feet widely into Charlie Chaplin feet, stacking the hands. resting the forehead on stacked hands. Notice how that feels on the low back. And then take a moment to come onto the elbows and bring that left knee out to the side into half frog. Ooh, suddenly got a cramp there. So just be mindful of that. If you have a wooden floor and you'd like a little padding under that left knee, left ankle, use a blanket. And then bring the hands out into cactus arms or goalpost arms and let the side of the face and the head rotate towards either the bent knee side or the other side. You can choose and explore here. Notice how it feels at any time, this rotation in the neck. So we're taking the neck rotation a little deeper this time, 90 degrees. If that's too much, consider stacking the hands under the forehead and just turning the head to the degree that feels good. And let's work on those shoulders again by bringing both hands behind the back. So my left hand has grabbed my right wrist. That feels the most natural for me. You might have it another way. So we're bringing the shoulder. Now let's say your left hand cannot grab the right wrist. How about you consider grabbing a strap and each hand holding the strap back there, and notice if that is comforting in some way. It's nice to have the weight of the hands or the strap pressing down into the low back. Notice if your left hip, left thigh, the bent knee, leg, notice if it's able to let go of any more tension. Can the shoulders relax? And depending on what you've been doing today, you might find this has a few crampy places. So if any cramping occurs, move the body in such a way until the cramp disappears. Now over the next couple of breaths, releasing the hands and stacking the hands. Resting the forehead on the stacked hands. Gently roll onto the right temple and then the left temple. Once again, keeping the movements well within the range of motion of the neck feeling good. And as you get back into your activities for the spring, I'm really going to recommend you try approaching it from smaller movements in the beginning. And you might be surprised how quickly that opens you up, how quickly that gets the muscles prepared for the bigger range of motion. Let's try a little back bend to finish off here. You can bring the elbows underneath the shoulders, close enough so that the hands can reach the upper arms. The head can drop down. If that's too much, you can always return to resting the head on stacked hands. If you like to bring the elbows wider, hands wider to the edges of the mat, and then straighten the arms to create a deeper, more sensational sense of feelings, you can do that into seal pose. And then exhale, come down. And bring that left thigh back to join the right thigh. Noticing any contrast between left and right side. The left neck, the right neck, maybe in the left shoulder, right shoulder. And I would say definitely in the left thigh, left hip, right hip. Let's try the other side. So bringing the blanket to the other side. Coming into cactus arms. Turning the head. Waiting until there's a feeling of settling in the body so that the nerves and the muscles on this side of the body catch up. And by catch up, that's what I mean by settling in. That's when they're catching up. They're getting it. Oh, you've changed sides. Oh, okay. What does that mean for me? Once you settle in, you can invite the arms back. And you can play around with which hand grabs which wrist until you feel something that resembles natural in this handcuff position. And sometimes when we begin with, even though I know many of you have done this a lot of times with me, this particular pose, sometimes you just need to do it for shorter periods of time
and over time let it become longer and longer. So this is a great way to get the neck and head twisted with support. Opening that right hip. And the shoulders are really getting a lot of flexibility over time in this position. And with all the twisting you do, whether you're paddling or golfing or playing tennis, these deep yin poses also helping the dry connective tissue, the ligaments and the tendons that hold the twists to become a little more hydrated, have a little more give, so you're not having to battle against that very resistant, drier, coarser tissue. And noticing or perhaps you notice, I definitely notice the different from one side to the other. One side much more open than the other, less sensation, and one side feeling a lot more sensation. And over the next 2 or 3 breaths, you can let the hands find their way back under the forehead. Take your time. Stacking the forehead on the hands. And then once again, a little rotation of the head temple to temple. Stay well within the range of motion that feels right for you. And to finish off, you can, if you like the back bends, either come into that variation of Sphinx pose, elbows under shoulders. And if anyone enjoyed the seal hybrid, you can bring the hands to the edges of the mat, let the arms straighten. So that's going to be really that one we're doing right now is really nice for the hip flexors. And it's very deep. It's very intense on the lower back. Exhale, release, come back, bringing that
Right leg back. And then we're going to come onto the back. Coming onto the back. So you might want to reorient your head at one end so you can see if you're using the visuals. So we're going to come into some deeper twists in the lumbar spine. However, before we do that, bend the right knee and squeeze the right knee back towards that right shoulder. And then reach the left hand down to grab the right foot so that both hands are grabbing that lower right leg. The right hand's wrapped around the knee, perhaps. Left hand grabs the foot. And start to squeeze the lower leg into your ribcage, into your supine pigeon pose. Making sure that the shoulder blades are snug. And even though there's an isometric squeeze here, the biceps and the wrists definitely working. Try to keep the shoulders from shrugging. So we don't really want the upper body tense here, but the arms are working significantly to hold the squeeze of that right leg in pigeon pose. It'd be nice to visualize somebody else pushing your leg into your chest so that you could remain completely relaxed in this position. So if you could imagine that, if you could imagine someone else is actually pushing your leg up into your ribs and you're just relaxed here, that would be the right disposition to have, even though the arms are working strongly. So let's take 3 more breaths here to give the arms a spell. On that 3rd breath, you can release that leg. And let the arms flop out beside you. Right foot can stand on the mat. Extend the right leg. And once again, take a moment to compare left and right sides. So I like to get into the legs first before we do the twist, because the twist, even though it works the lumbar spine, gets into the glutes as well. Bend the left knee, pick it up, and start to hug the left knee. A nice way sometimes to deepen that hug is to take the right hand and scoop the fleshy part of the belly, the left side of the belly, towards the center of the belly and then pull back. And sometimes that leg has a little more space to squeeze back. It can make quite a difference, actually. When you feel that settle, right hand grabs the left foot, and you start your pigeon squeeze here. So this is getting the piriformis, the glutes ready for the twists. And then imagine your imaginary friend pushing your leg into your ribs a little more so that your arms can imagine they're resting. And it's so important with games like golf, canoeing, tennis, that this low back area gets plenty of release. Even a lot of walking, that tightens up so much back there. So what we're doing now is a great way to release when you're on your legs a lot like this. The 3, 2, and then release the left foot. Release the arms, let the arms rest. And then extend the left leg. All right, lumbar spine, bending both knees. Take the right knee over the left knee. And if you like, you can flop it up and down a few times just to make sure that the legs snuggle in. And sometimes that flopping shin can release tension in the thighs. It hydrates the fascia a bit through the friction of the flopping. And then release the flop. Push down through the left heel so you take the weight off the hips. Tilt the pelvis to the left and the knees to the left and let the torso, the upper torso stays on the mat, so the right shoulder stays grounded here. The lumbar spine is rotating to the left. The left outer thigh, right outer thigh is feeling a lot of sensation. The natural reflexive action when you feel a lot of sensation is to resist the twist. Could you create a little mental overdrive here and invite the right thigh to relax more? I often like to get a little shoulder work in here and rib work by lifting the right arm back behind the head. Opening up the rib cage, the right abs. The obliques. And you can play with that right shoulder a little bit, making micro movements until you find the place that feels just right. Three more breaths here. It's good to use those 3 breaths as a transition to bring the arm back slowly. And then rolling back onto the back of the low back, knees up and uncrossed. Gently stretch both legs out to feel any contrast between the right and left sides. It also helps release the calf muscles and the hamstrings after all the bending. Let's try the other side, bending both feet, crossing the left knee over that right knee. And if you like to flop, the flopping can feel very soothing for some. And as you feel the natural contours of the left knee over the right, stop. Prepare the right foot to press down to take the hips actually lift off the ground and tilt the pelvis, this time to the right, knees to the right. So you start to feel that in the left low back, left glute, left thigh. And once again, the reflex will be to tighten up. Could you bring your mental mantra of relax, let go into that left thigh? Do a little mental override. Option to lift that left arm back and over the head if your shoulders feel up to that today. It's definitely going to be good work for the shoulders. And then it's yin time. Sink in, let go, breathe, relax, notice, allow. And then using the next 3 breaths to gently untangle and return to the back. Both feet on the mat. Let the knees come together, feet apart. And feel this TP pose to help release the low back. And then gently come to one side. Make your way up to a seated position. And we're going to finish the practice with an extended supported back bend. So I'm going to recommend, if you have your bolster handy or a set of cushions or a couple of folded blankets the length of the spine. So if you had the blanket rolled up, something like that, could be nice. Maybe 2 of them if you have them. I also like to have the blanket and or towels handy, or cushions. Blocks are good to have handy. Let's have those handy. And then turn your back on the bolster or the pillows. Have a space of about 1 fist between the spine and the bolster, and then drape down. I'll have the blocks handy and the blanket handy. Now, usually I feel a lot tighter in this position than I do, but somehow with all the twisting, I feel much better than I normally would. But if the back of the neck is uncomfortable, use your towel or blanket to support it. That takes pressure off the back of the neck. If your low back is not enjoying this, bring a blanket or a towel underneath the pelvis, the hips. If the blocks are in range, grab the blocks. You could also have cushions. I like blocks. Now bring the soles of the feet together and the knees splay out to the side. And then use your blocks to prop up your thighs and try to look for just the right amount of sensation. So the further you push the blocks out towards the knees, the more sensation you'll feel. And see if you can find an amount of sensation that speaks to you as perfect. So there's some sensation. That means your hips are getting a stretch, the inner thighs, the groin. But if there's too much, you'll end up fighting it. You don't want to be fighting the sensation. You want to relax into the sensation. And if you feel the sensation fade over time because your hips are opening more, then you can walk the blocks out 1 or 2 centimeters and see if that works. So you can find yourself gradually coming into And the thing about 99.9% of our actions in sport involve bringing the head down, shoulders forward, and rounding the back. Add on top of that the tremendous amount of time we're in front of a computer or iPhone, and we have issues in our tissues. This pose counteracts all that forward flexion. So you want to make sure you feel really comfortable, especially the neck. Especially the hips. You don't want the hips to be distracting you from relaxation. At the same time, if you feel they can open more, just allow the blocks or the pillows to move out further. Now consider how we started class by turning the head very gently to the left, well within 30, 40, 50%, no more, very moderate, and just notice how far the head turns. Inhale, slowly bring back to neutral. And then exhale the head once again into that very, very moderate range of motion to the right. Inhale back to neutral. Lift the knees and sand the feet on the mat. And consider how you might best roll to one side. Some people like to stay on top of the bolster, and others like to come off. Gently press up to a seat. whatever the seat that might be for you. Campfire posture, crossed legs, kneeling. Notice the posture of the body. And visualize holding your golf clubs in this position, or your oar, or your tennis racket. Notice how the body feels prepared to bring your hands together in prayer. Let the head bow in gratitude. Namaste. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to turn this recording off.